This week on Carlie's Couch, we discussed how true evolution can only come from love. Oh, I did that. I almost forgot. I was like, ugh. And then I got it.
It sounds like we're about to talk about like mankind evolution, but in a way, I guess.
I mean, perhaps.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the couch. Carlie Carpio is to my right today.
Lextopia on my left.
And today we're gonna start our episode. You know what? Actually, just how you doing? Because it's spring now.
Yay!
It's been a little more consistent recently in LA, thankfully. Although I guess we can't really complain compared to some of y'all. But
yeah.
How you doing?
I feel like it's been a really busy season, but like in all the great ways. So my like main focus and intention has been chasing my highest joy. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean is like, you know, wherever that is. And somebody asked me yesterday, well, what does that mean? Like, where have you seen that? And I was like, oh, all my work that's impact. Mm-hmm. And so working with the kids that changed the tune, working with all my clients, doing my trainings for teachers with Holistically Dope, you know, going to markets for holistic, just like kind of loving on people. But like I've been kind of 10xing the amount of things that I've been doing and getting flued out for stuff. So I am really grateful and excited and also need a nap sometimes. But how you doing?
I'm feeling great. Energy been up, and I guess this will probably flow into what we talk about in the episode, but have definitely been, anytime I've been with like a group of friends and like different groups and they ask how I'm doing, or like the other day I got in an Uber and he was like, yeah, how you doing? And I was like, man, I'm doing good. I had a real good day. And he was like, okay, like you did? And I was like, dang, that sounded legit, didn't it? He was like, yeah. And I was like, wow, like I really do feel good lately. And I know most of that kind of stems from, you know, just doing the things that I say I'm going to do lately. So that kind of goes into what we're talking about later. But first, our question from the couch this week was, what's the most interesting thing that you've learned recently? So get ready for a bunch of random facts.
I was about to say, and realistically, we talked about turning this into an episode. So just enjoy because these are pretty great. So the first one is Be Your Girl by Teacher Moses was written about Nas. And I actually saw that in a interview too. So it's funny that they put this because I just learned that as well.
Y'all watch the same Instagram reel?
Same TikTok video.
The next one says, a species of female monkeys rub their vaginas together to stop males from fighting. I mean, that could work in a lot of situations.
Maybe we should try that more often. Okay.
They must have been dire.
There are more sheep in Ireland than people.
Oh, cool. The next one says, it's better to complete something not perfect than perfect something not complete. I had to leave my all or nothing behind to finish scripts and sketch comedy sets. I feel like that's not what was the question? Something you learned? Okay.
Recently.
That's something he learned.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for giving us that answer. This next one is, you're going to know who it is when I start reading, but the caterpillars have ants as bodyguards. So they can be protected as they eat leaves that contain nitrogen, and the caterpillars secrete the nitrogen and the other amino acids for the ants to take. As the caterpillars evolve, they become carnivorous, letting off a hormone that tricks the ants into taking the caterpillar back to their colony so then they can eat the larva and gain more nutrients to evolve into a butterfly.
Wow.
And that harvesting your own teepee poles is a lot harder than it sounds.
That was all the same person?
Yeah.
Oh, that was your boy. Yeah. I mean, the TP gave it away. That's the only thing. What does harvesting your own TP poles mean? Oh, to set them up?
Or I'll probably go get them out of the forest or like out of the thing.
Shoot. That don't sound easy at all. I'm still trying to get you up on the podcast.
Yeah, so soon.
And then to the caterpillar thing, I think nature is so funny because anytime you watch any like National Geographic or even just watching anything, it's really amazing, actually. I was telling somebody the other day, like, to be honest, like, my favorite content on social right now is just, like, watching animal stuff. Like, I'm good on it.
And has been for years.
Yeah. The next random fun fact is that, this person, I can run and finish a 26.2-mile marathon, and that I would actually still be alive afterwards. All right, congratulations.
Yep. So shout out to Danny and his 2 kids that just recently ran, and everybody else. Okay, so this next one. So glad these people put this here because I just went down this rabbit hole myself. So Hitler gave his soldiers crystal meth so they'd stay up / march longer. I heard Cat Williams say it in a special and I thought he was bullshitting, but then I looked it up and it was true. I'm going to continue that thought with Adolf Hitler himself was also hyped up on drugs. His doctors called him a good patient and he was meticulously adherent to a regimen of cocaine in aerosol form, what else? Amphetamine, sedatives, hormones, and relied on daily injections of the wonder drug Eucadol, which puts the user in a state of euphoria and often renders them incapable of making sound judgments. There's a whole book out here on this.
Yeah, and cocaine use and a few other things that we consider a drug or poisonous now, a lot of people, it was more normalized before. And I think it's also interesting that part of his experimentation and Nazi experimentation with a lot of substances and things is because part of their like ideas of eugenics and like making people feel their best or perform their best.
Optimizing.
Yeah, like how when you see on what's the Marvel one, the Captain America, when they injected him or whatever, which I just finally watched for the first time, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that's what happened. But yeah, it's like they were just trying to make like this perfectly strong human, and they're wild out.
Wild. And there's a whole book, I think it's called Blitzed or something like that, but if you look it up, like Hitler drugs, there's a whole book, and he did a bunch of extensive research, so there's like stuff to back it.
Yeah, I love me some Nazi like documentaries and stuff. They did so much. It's so interesting.
And there's this quote that I love, shout out to Dr. Charlie Kemp, is you cannot learn without reflection. And I think that sometimes people don't want to read about that stuff or look into it because it's like scary and it was bad and all this stuff. But I feel like that's the best way that we can prevent those things from happening, is actually reflecting on a lot of that stuff. And so, yeah, make sure you
give him more information than just the basics sometimes. Is there anything random that you learned? I was trying to think of something because when we asked the question, I was paying more attention to like my Instagram things, but I just didn't feel like anything was like cool enough, I don't think, but I know I learn a million things every day.
I must say I do too. It's hard, but I would say the Hitler one was pretty high up on my most interesting things because I had no idea. I mean, it makes sense once I read it, but I didn't really know. Okay, something cool as a trainer, so that if you injure a tendon or a ligament, you know how they tell you, if you injure rest, ice, elevate your foot, all that stuff, like, after an injury, you're actually not supposed to do that when it comes to a tendon or a ligament. You're actually supposed to keep moving it so that the blood flow, because inside of your knee and elbow and all your joints has a smaller blood flow than like big muscles. And so you want to actually keep moving them in a pain-free range or a slightly painful range to keep the blood flowing so that it's actually able to heal and keep growing strength.
Is there a way for a person to know it's probably just a ligament in the first place though? To know? If something was broke it.
Yeah, so if a bone is
like
broken,
if you can't move it, don't move it.
Don't move it. Yeah, but like for example, if you roll your ankle after the swelling goes down, you should start moving your toes up and down. After I got my ACL surgery, it was important for me to bend my knee to start to get back the range of motion and things. And I think that so often we're like, I hurt my knee, I can't run anymore. And it's like, no, you should probably start walking and working back up to running in order to be able to fully move.
Yeah, that's what people do physical therapy. And then on that same line, this isn't a specific thing I learned, but another Instagram page I started following recently was like this medics page. And it's like, I could tell they'll put out problems or they'll show a picture of somebody's skin and then be like, what's this? And then you can see all the doctors like answering, or people in medical school. So like lately I've been like, damn, I've been all in those pages too. Cause I'm like, learning about like how body parts work and random things like that. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yo, if you are into like the medical stuff and seeing like inside of joints, the Seattle Science Foundation, I think is what it's called on Instagram, they'll show you videos of like actual surgeries on cadavers and stuff, so you can learn, so you can actually see what an ACL looks like, see what an MCL is, look inside of an eyeball, so if you're into that kind of stuff.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
I think if you are interested in it, you should look at it to see like, there might be something there for you.
Yeah. But today's episode, so thank y'all for sharing all those interesting things. I love learning. We love learning. But today's episode was inspired. I saw this quote, and we get inspiration for Carlie's Couch from all different parts of our lives. And so I have a little folder on my phone where I save like vouch inspirations. And one of them, I saw this quote and it said, "We cannot shame ourselves into change. We can only love ourselves into evolution."
We cannot shame ourselves into change. We can only love ourselves into evolution.
Yeah, when I say that, what does that make you think about?
The first thing is I feel like we're such nerds. The first thing I noticed about this sentence is the interesting that it's change and evolution, the two different words, instead of like, you can love yourself into change. But it's not even about like the first one, like shame and thinking about changing yourself. It's almost like trying to force something, or like trying to fit something, like a round circle into a square peg type thing, as opposed to like loving yourself into evolution being more of just even that word choice is like the idea of becoming more yourself and or being something and then like fitting into that space. That's what the thing that makes it interesting. And what it's saying to me is just that you have to have a certain foundation. Like, only real change comes from you when you're like already kind of in agreement, or like, you know, your mind and your heart and all of that. What is it? Word, action, and something else. Thought, deed, action, whichever things. Like, all of that has to kind of be foundational, and then you begin to evolve. You can't be upset like, oh, I should have been doing this. I can't do this. I'm trying to change. I need to be doing this. Because you're still thinking about what you need to be doing and what you want to do, and you know where, and you're kind of coming from like more of the lack place. I mean, you know, we talk about that all the time, but that's what kind of it's making me think about. And then my next question would be like, well, how do you get to that space of like loving? You know, what does loving yourself look like to really evolve?
Yeah. And I love that you brought, it kind of comes from when you're so focused on like the thing you need to change. That's where all your energy is, and so you really can't. If you're focused on how much money you don't have, you're not gonna get no more money, and it's like, because it's where your focus and energy is going, and it just begets more of that. But what I would say, like how you get into that space is, I'll use an example. We often talk about like wanting to eat better, wanting to exercise more, take better care of ourselves. But I would say in my own personal experience and with clients, if you work out and you want change because you hate your body, or you think you're not good enough, or I'm too fat, or I need to do this in order to be loved, like you're never really going to get there, because that's a mindset change. You getting a physical body of what you think you should look like in order to get loved isn't going to make you feel loved. That's something that you have to learn how to do on the inside. And so what that mindset shift can look like is, instead of like, I work out because I hate my body, I'm working out to feel good in my body. I'm working out so I can feel strong, so I can feel confident, so I can get as healthy as I can. I'm working out because I love myself, and this is what I need to feel my best. I'm working out, you know, I'm making sure I get enough sleep. I'm eating these foods because they feel good in my body, not as a punishment. Because then also I feel like anytime you try to shame yourself into something, or it comes from such a negative, constrictive lens, like I rebel against that shit. So that doesn't work at all for me, because I'm a rebel.
Ooh, okay, so end of the episode, because Carlie made a lot of points there, and a couple of things to those points that you made me realize when you said one of the things a person say, like, oh, I'll never be loved. I look so whatever. Like, I need to gain weight or lose weight or whatever. And it's, I hope this doesn't get too like woo-ish, but at the end of the day, essentially kind of what you're alluding to is, you can't evolve from that space, because what you say is what's true, like in that time, right? When I'm looking in the mirror and like, ugh, like, gosh, I'm looking like whatever, like you are looking like whatever, like it's true. And that's where I think how you think and how you speak is important, because it's almost like, for people who believe in affirmations, like you are affirming that negative thing or that issue. And yet it'll be like all of a sudden you're like, wow, like I'm looking good. But it's almost like you already been doing the stuff, because now you're in a space of like, I'm looking good, even though you still are trying to, you know, evolve into something further. And yet that continues to be true. And not to say that things happen just because you say it, but it's like you're in a different space. Your energy is just kind of different, and now you're believing something different. So the biggest key, really, with a lot of this is like, you can't change if you don't believe yourself. And like, it's really not until you're in that foundation of, oh, I believe what I say, and like you actually are acting and being in a certain way, and you evolve into it further. Yeah, it gets a little weird to like kind of talk about, but did that make sense?
It did. It does, and I think that's where the mind fuck is. Is like I need to believe this thing about myself, but I can't
until it really happens.
You don't, and so it's like, okay, how can I bridge the gap between I have these negative thoughts or feelings, I'm trying to shame myself into making more money or becoming a better person or losing weight or whatever, and then to being the person, your ideal person that you want to be, is like, how do you bridge that gap? And I think that
I was trying to answer that.
Intention and action are the first two things that kind of come to mind. So if you know that like you have a negative perspective about your funds or your relationships or your body or whatever it is, like, you know that, and then you want to like think about how you want to have that. So I want to have money. I want to feel good in myself. I want to do that. And then every action that you take should help you get closer to that. And I don't think like, so for affirmations, people always say that they don't feel good. They don't feel real. And so it's not lying to yourself in the sense like, man, I'm rich, and you got $0 and your rent is due. But it's like, oh man.
Or even if you're like, I'm gonna have XYZ when you don't believe it.
Yeah,
it
you don't believe
work.
it, then it doesn't matter. But it's like, oh man, today I did 3 things to help me get more money. I did this, or I applied to 4 jobs, or I at least took a walk today. You know, as long as you're like doing things that then make you start to believe closer to what you're working towards, I think that is kind of the locomotion, the little train that gets you going towards from that gap from like where you are to where you want to be.
So to kind of summarize, are you saying kind of as a response to how do you bridge the gap to believing in yourself in a way that is a proponent of more of whatever you're looking for, is to start or to have some action?
Yeah, intentional action.
Intentional action. Okay. I think I agree with that. I'm trying to think of in one of my specific examples. And it's like, it's interesting because I know the stories. I like at least a clean 3 to 5 very recent examples of like, wow, I'm like, all of a sudden, like, I'm a different person with this thing or that thing. And yet when you backtrack it to be like, what changed? I think maybe it was that. So here's one for me, is that while I was in the Bahamas over the holiday break, a first step that happened was like I've kind of like finally got fed up with something. So like I was like, okay, my eczema is just been like, why is it not getting under control? And I decided, I said, you know what? I'm really gonna like just totally switch my diet up for real right now. And this has all happened within an hour, FYI. Like, because, you know, sometimes you just are thinking about it and sometimes you really just do stuff. And then I did something. I Googled anti-inflammatory meal plan because I already recognized, so maybe it's an assess also like, well, what would make it different this time? And I assessed that, well, I would eat better if I had stuff in my fridge and I had the plan of knowing what I'm going to make, you know, day to day. Because I used to meal prep and I didn't have no problem or whatever. And also I had a narrative of like, I don't really like cooking. I don't like making my own food. And so I would say probably like being fed up with it finally outweigh like, you know, the things that held me back from action. And so I remember looking up the meal plan and I looked at all these different recipes and I'm like, oh, these, like the ingredients are very simple. You know, it's XYZ vegetables and, you know, whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. I can make a grocery list from this. And this is all in like December. So I didn't even really start this till like mid-January. So I wrote in one of my notebooks, I made a grocery list. I was like, oh, this is all I need to get in order to make, you know, 4 or 5 meals, breakfasts, and know like, okay, on this day, and this day, I'm make the avocado toast. This morning, I'm making this. And so I was like, it's clear. So I clarified the actions. When I got home, I remember almost immediately, like the next day, going to the grocery store. So also that the action is like boom, boom, boom. And I didn't let time go by. As soon as I got back, because it was like a fresh start being back home and, you know, you got to get some groceries and stuff. I had my list already ready, went and got my groceries. Started making the food. It tasted good. I'm sorry, I'm making this story mad. It tasted good. And I started to like making it because I was like, oh, shoot. Like, now I immediately think of what were the positives? Like, I'm saving money. B, I'm doing what I said. And the do what you said is the strongest thing. So, like, to actually be making these meals was like, bet. Third, after a few days of like, wow, I'm just hyped that I'm doing what I said, then I actually start to feel a little bit better too. And so all of these pros start to come in where I'm like not even thinking about ordering too much unless I was high. And in which case that was also another thing, right? Like, how can I smoke less? And that was, so all these things are happening at the same time. For that, it was like, you know what? I only buy an eighth a month because I've tried different things about, oh, I only will smoke with people and that didn't quite work to withhold it. But I say, hey, if I only can do this, and I've been January, February, March, you know, for the last few months, I've like only had 8. Like I have 2 little nugs in and out because it's like, okay, I'm lasting. And then when I run out, I run out. So it all works together, right? And I also, around this time, I'm like doing my running. When I came back in January, I had a slow start getting back to it and I got really sick for a minute. But then when I got that back into it, it's like, wow, I'm seeing and feeling like a well-oiled machine. My mood, I could tell my mood changed so much, and just in even how I interact. If like when Carlie comes over, if I'm with people, like I care a little bit more about conversations with people, or actually want to like, invite people to go do something. And then the last thing I'll say about it is that now, again, I'm this person now. So I'm that person for a few weeks, and that kind of person has a nutritionist perhaps, or like they do all these other things. So then I'm like, dang, yeah, I want to go to a nutritionist so they can, you know, really next level my food plan, which he did. And now I got this other food plan, which is easy because it's only a few more steps away from what I was already kind of doing a little bit cleaner. And so it was easier, yes, to take those steps and steps. And then you lose 10 pounds in like 2 weeks and you're like, oh, I'm really like out here. Oh, I can fit the pants I hadn't been able to fit in 8 months and all of that. So it's like a whole journey. And all this was like, how do you bridge the gap to get to that? I was just sick of it, and I had to make like boom, boom, boom actions, and the actions were easy. So like each little action took me to the next action, and I guess I think I really wanted it enough, because to your point, there's some things that you think you want, and it's like you're still not quite doing it. And I think for me, health and wellness is the best first place to start if you're worried about your confidence, your discipline, because you can control that about yourself, whether it's, oh, I just do 10 sit-ups a day. Like, that's fine. But, like, the consistency there rubs off into everything. And so all of my habits, most of them that are different examples for me, are kind of around health and wellness. And because they all work together, and because I start feeling better, and because I've been so consistent, it's like I feel trash, like, not being consistent. Or I'll go out to eat, and I'll still get something healthy, but it's still like, man, I should just made a salad at home because it's still kind of blah. So action, yes. Planning and action, like, together, because if you plan, you get stuck in the plan, I think, a lot of times. And I know I talked a whole lot, but like, even as I'm saying it, it's like, man, all those pieces work together to like, and you have to become that person and do the things, and it sticks.
Yes. And so
now
I took notes.
I'm a runner.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I took notes because I think that is important. Notes for sure, because there are some important pillars in there, but there's a couple things I want to visit on that. So the first one is, it sounds hard to be like, oh, you know, if I want to be more happy, and then we're telling you like, oh, just be more happy.
Yeah.
You know, and so like, it's not necessarily easy, but the steps that Lexi and I both have came up with together in our stories is like, you have to reach a moment in time in which you're fed up, and which staying the same is actually more harmful to you or more uncomfortable than making a change. So there's that. Then you make an assessment of yourself, of your life. You think about your intentions. You have a plan with easy actions. And then you start to reap the benefits, which then build momentum and help you stay in that.
And confidence of, now I believe myself. Like, I love myself. I believe myself. I like cooking. Like, I can be like, oh, I like making my meals. And
so I think it's really important to recognize that anytime you're not making a change in your life, you're choosing that uncomfortability. So you're choosing to feel uncomfortable with your body. You're choosing to not do the things you know you need to do to build your business, or to make money, or to do that. And that sounds kind of harsh, to be like you're choosing to be unhappy, or you're choosing these feelings. But outside of like mental illness and depression and things like that, like, to a degree, we are all choosing on how we feel. And so I was listening to a podcast. Was it a podcast? No, maybe it's a Bashar video. I was listening to something on YouTube.
What video?
Bashar.
What is it? That's the person's name?
Yeah, okay. I think it's Daryl Anka, okay. And he channels an extraterrestrial being named Bashar. Mm-hmm. If you haven't, look him up on YouTube. He's great. But he was talking to the person, and they were like, oh, you know, wow, I feel so sad. And he was like, well, why are you choosing that? And then it's like a loop. So first you recognize that every emotion that you're choosing to sit in and not change, you're choosing. Like, every continued decision not to run, to keep ordering food, to waste your money on whatever, to be around people who don't really care about you, whatever, you're choosing that. Outside of abusive situations, you know, like, there's always, so don't be that person. But like, to a degree, we're all choosing a thing. But then you have to think about why. And so I did this with myself the other day. I was like, oh man, I'm feeling really sad and anxious, and I was just sitting with it, and I was like, well, why am I choosing this? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, because I'm choosing to believe that I have to take on all of this extra stuff in order to, show my friends that I care about their businesses, and to do all this. And anyways, I was feeling very overwhelmed. But the important part is to recognize that you're choosing it, and then the second part is to say, I'm choosing this because I believe I have to, because I feel like this, because I do this. And then that kind of helps you close the narrative and then take a better perspective.
Mm-hmm. A couple more things about the choosing part, because that is hard to kind of talk about without it seeming like, okay. But not to beat the health and wellness like to a pulp. However, one thing I've saw recently that made me go, like, you're probably right. We've talked about how it's like, dang, everybody, wants to say they have ADHD and this and that and that. This is probably Dr. Amen who said that, actually, that consider or reframe to look at yourself also. There's mental health and your mental illness. And then there is brain health. And so to think about it like, dang, I could be out here like, oh man, I got ADHD, blah, blah, and you know, maneuver things and do things that help. And or literally, like I said, how like I could tell my whole mood change from what I put in my body. I think sometimes you can look at it as like I'm choosing to be unhealthy, essentially. Even with some of these random things like, oh, I want to wake up earlier, or dang, I wish I didn't look like whatever, or I wish I ate different. And I'm sure maybe that's not exactly for all types of goals you might have, but it's like, instead of it being like, dang, I'm choosing to be, you know, like I'm choosing to be this size per se, if you kind of reframe it to like, okay, you're not making the healthy habits, right? So you're choosing that, but it may be a matter of brain health in some cases, to where when you start eating right, start working out, you may notice like the way you do a lot of things actually is different. And like, if you actually make your brain a little healthier, I thinking this, and don't take my word on this exact sentence part, but it makes me question actually now, like, oh, maybe it's not that I don't have a mental health disorder as much as my brain was not optimized. Like, it wasn't healthy. Like, it couldn't do what it's supposed to do because it's bogged down by stuff.
Yo, people feel like they got to be tired, and once you get past 30, my body's going to break down. No, you're choosing to not do the things and that's outside of illness, but you're choosing to not do the things that would optimize you. So for example, like, you will feel much clearer if you're drinking enough water and eating nutrient dense foods and getting enough sleep and working out. And then you have to recognize,
it'll all wrap into whatever you're trying to do.
And so thinking about why you're choosing the actions and your habits, because you are choosing those things. And then I looked up my notes because I wanted to make sure. So, you know, the sentence is like, I am choosing to feel this, or I am feeling this because I choose to believe that I need to. I choose to believe that I need to. I am choosing, I am feeling down about my body because I choose to believe that the size I am right now is not good enough, and that I'm in a lot of times the things we choose serve you. So for whatever reason, you're choosing these things because to your brain, it's less scary than doing something different. And so I just think it's a cool exercise to practice with yourself whenever you notice you might feel stuck. Man, I'm choosing, I'll put my business
I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, you're thinking about like, you are choosing to believe a thing.
Yeah. And so like, I'll think about this. So I've been doing all this cool stuff for my business, and I was getting all excited about my posts, but then I started getting overwhelmed, and I just shut down and didn't post about some stuff. And I was like, okay, Carlie, let's have a check. Okay. And I said, I choose to feel overwhelmed because I don't know if people will like my posts and care, and I'm not sure if this is going to be a good investment of my time. And it's like, oh man. And then you're able to have
break that down.
More grace for yourself. Yeah. And recognize you have a choice to approach things the way that you want to. And my last thing about this is that it doesn't have to just be the negative or uncomfortable emotions or things we're choosing. Like, you can also choose to feel immense gratitude and joy in this moment. You can choose to feel abundance and peace. You can choose to feel loved and adored, and also turn your reticular activating system on for those things in your life. So if you're like, man, I feel so loved because, you know, all my friends have been showing up for me this week. I feel so blessed and abundant because whatever. But the same way we can look at these negative emotions or perceived negative, uncomfortable emotions, you can also do the same for positive.
Yeah. And when I was starting my running journey, I remember there was something I saw where it's like you don't, and I think this is with most working out, but like, if you're like, running and like, okay, I got to lose 5 pounds, or you're running to, you know, because I need to be running, as opposed to, I think the author was like, yeah, it's like you're running or you're doing your workout, and it's like, wow, like my body can do this, or it's so nice to be outside and get fresh air. It's good to be moving. I love
taking care of myself.
Yes, I love that I get to do this because, you know, I'm doing whatever, right? But it is still a thin line between just saying that and like really believing it. So, and it's a thin line between choosing love, or like looking in the mirror and being like, you know what, I love myself, whatever. It's a very thin line between that and the action of like what comes first exactly, because it still kind of needs to be all in. Like, in that moment of you being like, you know what, I love myself, let me go take a walk. Like, it still kind of has to be like, right after that we need to do something, so that now you are believing it while you do it. You have to do it while you believe it.
Oh, I like that. So it's like pairing an action with your belief. Like if you're choosing to believe that you love yourself, and so you're cooking nutritious meals for yourself, and you are doing these things. And I think it's all about what we choose to believe. But I do believe that only real change can come from love. And only real evolution can come from love.
I love myself. I want to be proud of my skin or whatever. And so let me do this. Like it's just, it says like at some point when you catch yourself actually believing it, that's when you got to do something. Because you're not going to always believe it, Keep
that momentum popping. Yes. Because every day is not easy. But I think if we are, one, aware of ourselves and the things that we're believing, the narratives that we're telling ourselves, but then to your point, pairing action like with those things we're working to believe. Like if you choose to show up every day as the ideal version of yourself, what do they do?
Mm-hmm. And I have one more example and then one more question that I think maybe we could kind of end on. And that example, back to health and wellness, recently had a sit down with a friend who was, kind of going through it and like, they're dealing with something and dealing with feelings after a breakup. And I was like, you know what? Like, I was like, dang, I think this would be my number one advice for anybody with whatever you're going through. Like, it could have nothing to do with your body, but it's like, go work out, start working out. And this is if you're not already. Do something, add some kind of physical activity or some type of activity that changes your body, because being consistent with something and doing something that's good for you is the quickest way for you to get your own confidence together. Like, I don't care what your problem is. Like, low-key, the answer is like, you know what, maybe you need to like get out and do a little more something, because you're going to start to feel good and you have to do something that's going to make you feel good. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you now, so we're talking about these ways we change or whatever. I still have one very top thing that I could think of, because it's the thing I still am like, dang, I need to do this. I need to do this. For me, it's still meditation that for some reason, even though it's in my little hobby thing and I click off did my meals, boom, did my run, boom, meditation, days pass. I'm like, dang, I know I need to do it. I have it set, like, do this. And it's like, but why? I still, for me, that's something that I haven't connected whatever on really doing it. I have no idea why. But in those cases, like, so I wonder what is missing. And I think in that case, for me, I just, like, I don't know. I don't know what I believe. Maybe that's what I need to start with, what you said.
My question is also, why do you want to do it? Because I have a thought after. I have a follow-up thought after.
Okay. I want to maintain my twice a day 20-minute TM meditation practice to like keep my body moving, like not have stuckness. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know what the people type terms would be to say that, but like stress release, like time of super stillness, intentional stillness. Maybe that's it. And like rejuvenation, but I probably actually don't need rejuvenation as much anymore. Well, but I do think I still benefit from the stillness and from kind of like a release of like getting to the core of you to hear your own voice type thing.
Like finding that
but
stillness.
I don't need it. I don't want it enough right now for some reason.
But that's what I was about to say.
Hard.
But what I would also challenge is that for the first time in a long time, you have a very consistent physical routine. Mm-hmm. And so I would argue that on your long runs, you are meditating and you're doing things. And it might look very different for you right now. Mm-hmm. And so I also think that sometimes we get caught up in this thing of that our tools have to look the same along our journey. And they absolutely do not. I think that, because you told me you run without music sometimes because it gets on your nerves. Girl, that's a whole 3-hour meditation when you out there running like that. When you're doing things and the constant, I used to use running, like physical fitness and movement has always been medicine for me and has saved my life so many times. And so I think it's cool because I feel like you might already be getting some of those things and you think you need to do it this way, but your body's already getting it this way.
Different seasons you needed a different way.
And so maybe that's not the thing.
That's fair.
So maybe you just do a 5-minute stillness one. You know what I'm saying? Or it can look different, but it doesn't have to be that way. And if you notice that you keep getting stuck with this thing you're trying to force, try a different one.
I definitely was trying to force it because I'm like, man, I'm just not doing it. I'll look at it and be like, nah. Yeah, but then every once in a while, and this will be like every few weeks, like I'll do it or like I'll, grab a thing. I think, and again, when I've done it because the sun is shining like right in where I need it. And I'm like, I sit down right in it and it happens.
And maybe that's when it's supposed to. Maybe it doesn't have to be every day.
I mean, it's supposed to be twice a day, but I know what you're saying and you're right. But I think that's so interesting. It's like, I'm just not, I don't know, maybe it's like you don't need it, but like, I'm just not there. And so that's one thing, just so I also show people like, there's certain things I still like think I need to do and I don't do.
So many.
And it'll be at one point in my life or something that it just happens. That's how everything has been. It just happens. It just happens. I'm sorry. This is real serious. I'm wilding, but
no, I think
it's interesting.
That's
embrace what you want.
I think that's real. Embrace where you are. I do think that there's a level of discipline. So, but I think you have that in other things. So it's not you're not showing yourself you're not
in the
disciplined.
same bucket of like health and wellness.
Yeah,
it's like dang, I'm doing all the
you're
things
already
health and wellness,
doing.
Except
but you also might be like at your capacity for those things.
Yeah, perhaps.
And like, you know, it's like, oh, but I feel like I need this to be perfect and it doesn't. But also you might also be used to not having things completed. And so your brain's like looking for the one thing that you can't do to focus on instead of all the amazing things that you are doing. And so all of
maybe
this,
I should just take it off my little hobby.
Take it off.
Our habit. I keep saying hobby. My habit, like little checker. Because then it'll be like, oh yeah, I'm 100%.
And you can also change, do that. And then also change the way. So now it's like a bonus whenever you do it. You know, add it like that. And so it's like, oh, I feel good because I did this and all this stuff today. But to put a bow on this hoe and be done, we said there has to be a moment where like you get fed up and feel like staying the same is more uncomfortable than changing. You have to find that point, and for wherever that is for you, assess yourself, have intention, make a plan with easy action that you can do to really be that person. And then those benefits do it when you feel it. And then those benefits keep that momentum going.
Yep. That's exactly it. Benefits keep the momentum going.
Gang, gang.
We hope you learned something out of this. Oh, this doesn't make sense.
New heart. Not throwing no gang signs.
I enjoyed this conversation. It's always good to look back and to recognize like, oh, I actually have done this and this and this, but to understand yourself. I that's a big thing for me is I just love understanding myself. So I'm like, dang, what did I do that time? Or like, how did that change? And I know we've talked, I'm so sorry, scratching you. We've talked so many times about the whole, like, all of a sudden I just started waking up. But it's like at some point you identify as, and then because, I don't know, you just do it. So not to undo all of the, I'm sorry, Carlie, but I'm sure you all are gone by now. Y'all have a great week.
We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.